Hello, everybody. This is something new for me. I think that I'm doing this more for me than I am for anybody else, truthfully, where, I just kind of want to get in the habit of resetting my levels, resetting my plans, and kind of things like that, just so that I can continue to hold myself accountable as days unfold and everything like that. But of course, if people have questions or concerns or anything like that, definitely just reach out to me, um, and hopefully I can manage to answer things. So I guess to kind of ideally I want to try to keep this simple because I feel like we're actually in a very simple situation now because this is the volume profile. It's a daily volume profile. I'll turn on the candles in a second, but these are your daily volume profiles, and then from there you have a monthly volume profile right here, and this starts essentially at the beginning of November, and it basically shows you everything here. So to start, first thing I'm going to say, right, was that we tried to continue the rally, and it did not work out, right? We had basically rejected. On the 4 hour chart, you can actually see it a lot better, where we basically had a massive gap up, and we were not able to get any traction out of this zone right here. And excuse me. And you can see that we even started to build up volume, but then we left a pretty good LVN up there, which to me that signifies that there actually is not enough interest up here yet. So essentially we need to continue, the value needs to continue to shift higher, which you can see is no longer happening, right? Value was shifting higher. Now value is kind of starting to find a balance, right? We have two value area highs stacked right there. I have them marked right around there. We did manage to close above that, right? It was a Friday, it was OPEX. There's a million things you can say about that. But ultimately, I think that going into next week, I hate to make it so simple, but it really is a matter of like if we can manage to gain traction above this general area right here, right, this like 850 level on NQ, then I think that we can actually start to see a lot more upside. Um, of course, you're going to have this area right here. I think what will probably end up happening is that we're going to need to build volume up here. And then from there, that will basically create the launching pad. We'll have this LVN as protection for bulls to essentially be able to. I mean, there's a lot of things that can basically be done here. I mean, you have this massive gap down that had happened back in September, which is still left unopened. So, is it going to be some type of 1,000 point week next week? Probably not. I mean, it stinks. It'll be a short week, probably a low volume week. So I doubt that we're going to see some serious upside momentum. But I do think that, just as we kind of continue to drift up higher, as a bear, it's incredibly difficult for me just to go short and not expect there to be some type of like aggression that's going to follow, right? If you look at what had happened, I mean, basically every single time that the only time we got some really good follow through was on the 17th, right? That was when, and this was an overnight session, right? So if I turn off the overnight, right, the 17th kind of becomes obsolete now, right? Because this is what happened in the overnight. And yeah, sure, you're getting this follow through every single day. You're getting this nice downtrend, but to be short in this is actually still incredibly difficult. Like, I personally am on the side of like, okay, I'd rather go long at areas of interest. Like, you had a LVN that was printing right here, right? This was a great area to look for a long single, right? Just because we're getting in here doesn't necessarily mean I have like a buy order right here, or at the right here. I don't have buy orders just sitting there, but what I am looking for is, okay, where, like, how are we looking in terms of whatever I'm using for my execution chart, right? That's over here, but I think that it's a little bit that's like a whole other discussion. So, I think that if I'm a bear, right, the main thing that I'm looking for, and again, I hate to make it so simple, but it's like you really want to start seeing us accept back with inside of this range, right? Because then that to me essentially will say that this entire move is being rejected for now. Am I still on the side of, I'm gonna short and I'm gonna be looking for new lows? Probably not. I think that this move right here kind of gave a lot of concern, and I just think that where we are in terms of the time of the year and everything like that, it's a little bit difficult to be aggressively short. Does that mean that I'm going to long once we get back down here? No, I think that my bias essentially changes, and it no longer is short with caution and long with aggression. Instead, it's like, okay, I'm gonna short with aggression and then long with caution, right? Because the moment we start building more volume, like theoretically next week, if we manage to do something like this, right? If we manage to come down to here, we bounce, um, we manage to bounce up higher, and then from there we continue down lower. That is going to be harder to play as opposed to if we just drop down to here, we build volume down here, and then we continue down lower. Because then that's going to essentially leave this very nice profile up here, right? It's going to give you a good distribution zone and an area to manage risk from. What is going to be a lot more difficult to play is if we drop down to here, start to build volume, then we drop down, and then we build volume, then we kind of rotate higher, then we chop around as we honestly did here, right? This wasn't a very clean week, in my opinion, because we had got a lot of back and forth. I mean, we had a massive gap up yesterday, right? And then we literally just sold it off immediately. And then if you didn't catch this sell, right? If you didn't catch that morning session, then you really were on offsides essentially for the rest of the day, because they kind of just bought us right back up. So all in all, I think that to kind of give a very basic summary, I think that I am really ideally looking for shorts below 510 and looking for longs above 840. As of right now, we're currently at 754. So in these areas right here, this is a part of a totally separate study, but these are actually very important because these areas right here are essentially telling me that the pivot for every single session is creating areas of interest. So it's like for a long trade, right, you have support right here, um, and you have a good distribution right here. So in terms of going long, excuse me, we could potentially trail down to here. You find some buyers, and then that can be the thing to really send us up higher, right? If that doesn't end up happening, then I would actually be incredibly skeptical of really trying to take any strong long out of this zone. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of it for me, honestly. I feel like I'm really looking at this area here for potential longs. Um, and then from there, I think that that potentially you have two value area highs that are kind of stacked right up against each other that I'm also very interested in, just areas to manage risk from. And I feel like my thesis right now is that it's easier to manage risk on the long side. It's a lot harder to manage risk on the short side because we could technically just squeeze and keep on squeezing, right? Like it's nobody's business. Whereas, on the short side, we could drop down to here, and then maybe you could take a short right here, and then maybe you get the break, or maybe you get some chop, right? Like that's kind of the execution around a lot of these levels have been incredibly difficult. So really, what I would want to be looking for is an acceptance back within here to get us down to here, down to this value area, and then from there potentially you're able to get down to here. So I guess if I was to kind of draw it out, it'd be something more like, it doesn't really matter where we open. What I would be looking for on the short side is kind of a drop down to here with um, with some type of bounce up higher, and then from there continuation lower. Acceptance within here. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this one. Acceptance, kind of starting to build a little bit of volume here, and then ideally you're able to get out of this LVN, right? You're able to get through this LVN, start to build more volume down here. I do think that there's going to be a good amount of support right here. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to get out of that zone. So, you know, all in all, I mean, I feel like I think that it's a tricky time right now. I think that price action has kind of been a little bit confusing for me, truthfully, because we open up on a massive gap up and then we sell off 10 points or 20 points, and then from there, we kind of continue higher or we just drift lower. So I think that a lot of it's definitely been a big week in scalping for me, because of the current price action. I think that I had a lot of hard time kind of trying to decide on where we would go from here. I think that obviously what the profile now says is that We tried to find value higher. Instead, we had a double distribution day and ended up closing somewhere down here. And then from there, you continue to kind of build value higher. So it kind of seemed like more of a short the rip kind of day, but that's incredibly difficult on Friday when we're gapping up and then we're selling off, right? So it's like a lot of the kind of like the signs aren't incredibly clear, but I think that in terms of the long side, what I would kind of be looking for is something like this where, let's say we open somewhere around here. I'm just going to go ahead and draw that right there. And then from there, we're able to kind of test up here. And then from there, maybe you do a retest there, right? Grab more buyers, and then you're able to get back into this LVN right here, somewhere right around there. That would kind of be the main thing that I'd be looking for in terms of the buy side. And yeah, I mean that's kind of it for me. There really aren't too many other elements that I feel like I'm so like eagerly looking for right now. I think that I'm still in a very much a scout mindset. I tried to do a swing, a few days ago, and that didn't really work out. I tried to do like a swing overnight. Kind of took a little bit of a paper cut on that, and so I don't think we're in a swingers market by any means. I don't feel very confident in taking any larger trades. I think that I'm still on the mindset of like I'm gonna scalp at areas where I can manage a risk from. And as of right now, where I can really manage risk from is from the perspective of being a buyer and then managing risk around that. Unless the moment we can start finding acceptance down here, that is when I actually start to become a lot more interested in becoming a seller. It's essentially the moment that you start to find acceptance really below this area right here, right? That is really my line in the sand, um, because essentially, ability to find acceptance down here puts us in a place where I no longer am going to be so cautious, and then it makes this look like a much more clean of a rejection. Just some trade ideas, I guess, is that you could probably take a short somewhere right around here with the idea that we're going to essentially be able to reject any move higher, and then from there you can play the liquidation lower. But again, excuse me, I lean more on the long side than I do on the short side because of the fact that, um, yeah, I lean more on the short side, and I'm actually just moving this just because I think that in terms of this actually feels more like a chop zone than anything else, because we can just build out more and more volume here. So now that I actually look at it, it seems like it's actually going to be a better play for us to open below here, or and by open, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're having some like 100-point gap down. It just more so means that maybe shortly after the RTH open on Monday, we start to find acceptance below here, and then that's what can kind of give you this acceleration lower and ideally send you back into this point of into this value area here. So if that happens, great. But then from there, I'd be looking into this general area. This is obviously going to be chop, but then from there, again, you can manage risk. So really, I guess if I really want to get technical, like all of this is basically a no trade zone, right? It is literally a no trade zone for me because of the fact that it just, I can't see, there's no clarity in this zone. And I'm even going to go as far as to kind of do a quick little balloon, and I'm just going to say no trade zone. Bam. Bada bing, bada boom. Look at that. Center left. I actually wanted to just be able to make it bigger. I guess that's not going to be able to happen. And that's it. Because I feel like I have no interest in, trying to do any of that nonsense.